Hey y'all, Boss here. You're probably all getting sick of scrap, so I'm taking a break from that today. Today I'm going to investigate MAMs, make anything machines. There's been a few cryptic references in Friday Facts. I'm going to dig into what is a MAM, why we might want one, and also some examples on how to make one. It's just something that's caught my eye. It might not be the most interesting. I know they've just released a bloody lava monster, but I didn't know that when I started. Friday Facts 428 was called Roboport Circuit Improvements, but this is actually a pretty hefty logistic network circuit upgrade. Here is where they mention make anything machines, but I've actually been thinking about this all the way since Friday Facts 394. So what actually is a MAM? A make anything machine is when we use the logistic network and the circuit network to control your factory production based on some pre-configured circuit conditions to meet your requirements. And why would we make one of these besides the challenge? Well, they gave us the clue in this GIF here. Have a look at Friday Facts 394, assembler flipping and circuit control. If you're the same as me, you saw that field of combinators here and noped right out of there. But I think they were being a bit sneaky actually and hiding something in plain sight. Check the assemblers themselves. Nothing else is particularly late game. They're just making inserters, but the 4 assemblers contain quality 4 tier 3 quality modules, and the machines themselves are quality 4 as well, epic. This is likely the highest tier they have available for this build and would have been a huge setup cost. Why would they do it this way instead of building something more simple? A staple of strategy game concepts is the trade-off between building tall versus wide. I probably don't need to cover that here. A make anything machine though is a good example of building tall. You can consolidate an entire mall setup with fewer, more expensive buildings. Most of the time, malls sit idle, so they're usually a waste of modules or beacons. Quality changes the thinking on that though. Would a 100 assembler and all their inserters, belt mess and logistic coverage still be worth it if you could build the same thing with 1 or 2 high quality, super fast assemblers? Also, when this Friday Facts was released, we hadn't actually seen the EM plant or the foundry machines yet, but these two would take this concept even further. For some circuit complexity, I promise it's not too hard, you get the benefit of concentrating your early investment into modules, especially quality, into a few highly upgraded buildings. I think it will be worth it, but again, we still have to wait a few weeks to try it out properly. I've even found a few more of the janky mods to help me here, so I've been able to slap some things together for a show and tell today. So I want to design a single basic cell, which I can expand later. I can't decide whether I stick with the name MAM cell or the classier tall mall. I'm going to need a requester, assembler, active provider, storage, all on the same network. I'm going to need a reading of all the products in the logistic network. That's simple. That's available from the current Roboport. I'm going to need a constant combinator showing my requested end product levels, include intermediates too. I'll start with just a few products and gradually expand my request list as I get comfortable. Similar to loading a train from a logistics base, by inversing the current stock levels and adding the request levels together, you get a list of signals with the positive values being the required manufacturing queue. Using the Coming Selector Combinator, this time I've installed a simulation mod for this, I can pick the highest demand item just by selecting the largest number from that list. The mod I'm using is called the UPS Friendly Selector Combinator by Matrix V. Thanks Matrix V. I'll leave a link in the bottom. There's another mod I found with another combinator simulating space age features. Crafting Combinator, Zeraph's Fork, lets you place a combinator next to an assembler and it implements the recipe read-write that will be coming in space age. I think that's a full set. A simple MAM cell should be possible just with these ingredients. So here is the simplest possible MAM cell in action. Hopefully that Friday Facts gift didn't scare too many folk away. All we have to go through is 4 combinators to get a handle on how this works. If you've ever built a logistic train load station, these first 2 will be pretty familiar. I've taken the logistic readout from the RoboPort here and multiplied all signals by -1. Next, there's the constant combinator. This is your MAM request list. Here we add any products we want the factory to make. These 2 get added together on the red wire, and now we've got a sorted list of what needs to be made by the assembler to fulfill all the requests. We'll call this the manufacturing queue. This one is new, but if you've been reading the blog posts, you will remember it from Friday Facts 384, Combinators 2.0. This is a selector combinator, and its particular configuration is to take the largest value and throw the rest out. It then passes this on to the assembler to set the recipe. Sidebar here, pre-space age, we have to simulate this with the blue combinator here. In this mod, if you place this combinator adjacent to an assembler, it can read and write the recipe. I'm just using it to write. When the recipe changes, the spare products need to be dumped, so they get ejected into this active supply chest here. Both of these features will not be necessary once the expansion drops. They will be the default assembler behavior. I strongly suggest going back and having another read of Friday Facts 394 for assembler circuit behavior. Linky in the description. The input comes from a requester chest here. There are definitely better ways of doing this, but the simplest way to control is to already have a stockpile of all the items you'll need already here. Assemblers will be able to output the recipe ingredients, which could be used to dynamically change this, but that's not really needed to show the concept. The only benefits to controlling the input levels based on the recipe would be just to reduce the overall held buffer size of intermediate products. The last logic I added, the output goes through a filter stack inserter here, with its filter controlled by the same manufacturing queue combinator. This is the fail-safe in case anything goes wrong, or even just when the machine is done. So how does this guarantee that a recipe's inputs are all available? That's actually easy. You only actually have to control the order they are fed into the machine. Order the queue by making sure the request list is correctly ordered from largest to smallest. If an item is a recipe input, it must have a value higher than its final product. E.g., green circuits need copper wire, so let's make green circuits 500. Let's also add belts and inserters. say 200 each. Once you've played with combinators a bit, you'll remember to always set up a power pole for monitoring. You can actually see two networks on this pole. These green tinted items here, this is the whole manufacturing queue. The positive ones are the items in deficit. This red one here, this is the output of the selector combinator. So that's the product being made right now, as you can see. So it stops when it's done, but the recipe's still in there. So that's why the filter on the output inserter was necessary. If then I want to take some or get supplied by personal logistics, it starts straight back up again. Of course, just the simplest cell isn't enough for this video, so here's something a bit bigger. While basically still the same design as the original MAM cell, this one is starting to actually build tall, and throughput of this may start getting up to levels worth the extra complexity. The legendary modules and buildings would be hideously expensive for this point in the game, but I'm showing the purpose of a build like this. At this speed, crafting speed 34, your inserters are usually your limiting speed, so I've tripled the inputs and upped the quality of the inserters too. Multiple assemblers can be controlled by the same logic for extra speed, though I'm doing something a little different here. This one tries to smooth out the spiky production requests a little. Look at the two assemblers on the right. They are reading the same logistic levels, but are actually working on the second most urgent item in the production queue. This is doable with a second selector combinator here. This lets me start making much more complex items. See here, I'm making up to assembler 3s, which not only take assemblers 1 and 2, but also speed modules. I want to put it through a stress test, so let's give it some high intensity stuff to make. Electric furnaces and maybe beacons. While I was working on supporting fluid recipes, see the pipes I was starting to add at the bottom, I spotted its weakness. If a logistics status is all negative, meaning all requests are fulfilled, it should sit idle. However, this design still just picks the highest two negative numbers and keeps building. It might not stop until it's overloaded its storage. Sometimes it stops by itself, but that depends on too many factors, like what the last two products were, and this isn't really that easy to tune out. It's not a deal breaker, but it is a pretty big waste of resources, and it defeats the purpose of setting up your request sizes. So I moved on to this last build. Look at this guy sitting happily. There's no recipes in the assemblers. That's because all the requests are fulfilled. Let's give it something to do. The finished status was actually pretty easy. The combinator logic is the same. I just added one extra filter here. Only values greater than 0 make it through this combinator to the assemblers. So now, if there are no outstanding requests, the assembler will just sit idle. That means I don't really need the filtered output inserters anymore, but I kept them there as a final safety. I finished off fluids as well. I've got 8 assemblers here, so half of them are getting sulfuric acid, half lubricant. You could probably be more clever with circuit controlled pumps and stuff, but this shows what I need it to. It drops it down to half speed, but only when making blue circuits, blue belt equipment, or electric engines, which is manageable. I've added 8x8 beacon sandwich on this design, so I figured it was finally worthwhile trying something extra. This one is actually 2 separate MAM cells on the same logistic network. The left side uses max productivity modules and makes all the intermediate products the cell needs. The right side here is straight speed modules, so this part focuses on the final products. There's a quirk here that you might see while this gets close to the end. I didn't plan this, but because they share the same logistic network, these guys on the right finish their products first. But then after that, they can still help out with stocking up the intermediates because of this status here. Even though they aren't on the request combinator, logistic bots often reserve more items than are currently available, pushing the actual storage contents negative. A negative value in the network gets presented over here as a production request, so the final products side helps out too. So, what's still to go? Quality molds. I still want a MAM cell that also enriches up to the highest available quality. I think this will be doable with this setup, but I didn't include today for 2 reasons. Firstly, the upgrade philosophy would be a video in itself. I've only gotten as far as some Excel calcs. I've got a few ideas as to how to best optimize either to minimize resource wastage or maybe to maximize upgrade speed once we've secured bulk resources, Volcanus. Secondly, a more practical reason. While I've had a blast with the janky quality mod these last few weeks, it doesn't deal with the quality levels the same way as the main game will. Modding limitations, it is called janky after all. Thanks for sticking around. Like I said, it's a bit of a different one today and I do hope you liked it. This save is also going into the GitHub I've been storing them in. Feel free to have a play and improve these designs. I'd love to see a quality enrichment loop using something similar to this if anyone was game to give it a go. Otherwise, I've still got a couple more ideas in the tank, but we'll see if life lets me put any more videos together before the release. Have a good one.